For my project, I'm going to be talking about the volcanic activity and its influence on ocean and atmospheric systems. So, a little introduction about that. Um, for an overview, volcanoes have been around for billions of years, and its activity is important to when it comes to shaping how we explore the wonders of Earth's complex ocean and atmospheric systems. Um, to go into some more important stuff about that, aspects like climate regulation, ocean ecosystems, uh, dynamics, ocean chemistry and acidification, natural hazards and risk management, geological processes, and ocean formations are major results from volcanic activity, and they're important to understanding the current state of Earth's environment. Um, why is it important that we need to know this? It can help us better understand the effects caused by volcanoes and how we can prepare for things like global warming. And over here, this picture is kind of showing the different levels of atmosphere, and it has a little picture of Mount Pinatubo and the different height level of how much that sulfur and ash was able to rise. And it was able to rise from the explosion all the way up to the stratosphere. Um, and the little uh, thing where it says aerosol optical depth, that's basically talking about the state of what the Earth looked like in a way with heat. Um, so because of that, about 2 months before, it was a lot of, as you can see, it was very black and blue. Um, but as soon as the mountain erupted, to about 3 months later, there was a huge shift in heat due to all the sulfur and ash being in the atmosphere. So now a little bit of background information um, behind volcanoes. The history of volcanoes and their effects on the ocean and atmosphere have been around for millions, even billions of years since the Earth was created. Since during that time, volcanoes erupted slowly, but it contributed to the ever-growing problem that we deal with today called global warming. And global warming, you may have heard it throughout, or that or climate change. They're kind of similar in that way. Um, it's been talked about throughout this class. So, kind of to go more into like global warming, that's the definition itself. It's the increasing of air temperatures near the Earth's surface. And you could think of it also as like different influences being affected, you know, that could also contribute or cause like an enhancement or even a decrease in global warming. Um, could be like the ocean currents and atmosphere. They can also be used for that to happen. And this picture over here is kind of showing um, just, when volcanoes erupt, the temperature will rise. But even then, um, it can also lower the temperatures. And we'll delve more into that later on. Key issues. So, one of the key issues is volcanic eruptions that affect over time. So, due to the process after a volcanic eruption, it may take time for the Earth to deal with the harmful after effects, and those effects may become greater over time. And this picture kind of goes with this first one. Um, and this picture is going to be used again in the next slide, but for the time being, it's kind of showing the difference between after it erupted from in a matter of hours all the way up till years. The ash and sulfur had caused a number of effects to end up, kind of harming, this a city or a type of land. So that's what could possibly happen. And then the second key issue is volcanoes and their impact to climate crisis. Because volcanoes release ash and other chemicals in the air, some of the ash stays in the atmosphere, while the rest may cover the land or fall in the ocean. And this not only has effects on the ecosystem, but the heat that's produced from the carbon in the atmosphere affects the Earth as a whole. Now, to go into the research findings, um, when doing some of the research findings over the first key issue, most of the time when people think of huge disasters, volcanoes get overlooked. Because usually, earthquakes and other natural disasters are possibly sometimes more bigger. But when it comes to volcanoes, um, because they are overlooked sometimes, and it's located out in the ocean, it doesn't affect us people and their livelihoods as much, but that's far from the truth. Um, for example, one the damage from volcanoes that they work over time. This one article I'd found from I think it's the Tautai Foundation, I believe is how you pronounce it. Um, they talk about Mount Tambora back in 1815, and this volcano erupted, and the blast impacted a small Indonesian island, killing over 100,000 people, making it one of the deadliest eruptions in history. Just in a matter of hours, not only were over 1 million square kilometers covered in ash, but pyroblastic flows were formed, and once they hit the ocean, the impact was so powerful that tsunamis were created due to the force, and they were on their way to hit the Eastern Java. And then, because of all that sulfur and ash, about a year later, since it was still in the air, um, it made its way into the stratosphere, where this had eventually caused the temperature to drop to freezing temps. Um, this had also caused problems where clothing was freezing to washing lines. People were eventually starving due to not being able to get food from trade routes or even grow crops because everything had frozen died. And so over here, basically, this top picture is um, the picture of Mount Tambora. And then again on the left bottom picture, that's kind of the one we saw last slide, given a timeline over, what it could possibly do if the sulfur and ash is still in the air. And then the right side picture is showing um, different volcanoes that happen in the area around the um, the Ring of Fire. So the ones that are in red, those are considered more eruptions with major climate effects. And Mount Tambora, which is right here, that one is in red. The rest are all more recent eruptions that have happened. To continue on the findings, now if we move on to the second key issue, there's no doubt that volcanoes create a big issue for the ocean and the atmosphere. Um, and its role for the problem of global warming is not one to overlook. For 2 centuries, the ocean has held in around 30% of heat from volcanic eruptions. And that has kind of caused a problem with the ocean temperatures. The temperature of waters have started to rise, making the waters a lot warmer. But in the process, it also had slowed um, down global warming from, progressing. And even though that does sound like a great thing, it also has some downsides. As the sulfur and the ash entered the atmosphere, um, when it made its way to the stratosphere, according to a an article from Georgy Stenchikov in his online book titled "Climate Change," he stated how the ash and sulfur in the stratosphere created more of an artificial, fake aerosol layer, um, and it was actually created to help combat the effects of global warming. But if you think about it, because of even though that does sound like it's a great thing, slowing down the process, it also caused, temperatures to drop. And without the heat, plants and animals will freeze and die because of, there's no heat being able to keep them alive and moving. And also the buildup of CO2 uh, throughout both the atmosphere and the ocean due to the volcano um, had major problems when it came to the air quality. It made it very poor. making the oxygen very hard to be clean for all creatures to breathe. Knowing this, it can, and all these problems, it could have a very negative impact for everyone's health. So over here, basically, this is a picture of basically the ocean heat intake. So more around the Philippines, it was a lot, colder, and more near the North Atlantic, it's a lot warmer over there. Um, and this was recorded about in 2015. So down here is also like a graph. So it showed basically back in 1995, the upper ocean was cold. It was below zero basically. But as time went on, it ended up getting a lot warmer. While the deep ocean, yes, it did get a little bit warmer. It wasn't as warm as the upper part of the ocean. So now to discuss about these things, what we found, due to the research findings, they can be related to oceanography and meteorology due to the fact that volcano ash and eruption can fall into the ocean or stay up in the air and move to the stratosphere. And even if you take the volcano out of the equation, when it comes to global warming, both the ocean and the atmosphere play their own parts in contributing to slowing or progressing the process. Now, even though we've talked about the two key issues and all that, um, some people may hear those and they say, well, yes, that does sound bad, but if you think about it, wouldn't slowing the process of global warming make, make everything better? Because then we won't have to worry about, the heat taking over everything. Well, there I agree on some points and I disagree. But when I was researching, I did see one article from NASA, and they had stated that when it comes to volcanoes, without them, we would not have an ocean or the atmosphere in general. The Earth would have basically just been a barren wasteland, because the gas that was released from it was able to help the atmosphere form and the ocean form over billions of years ago. So continuing more on the discussion, because of now knowing that, when it comes to real world implications or applications, when you think about it, the volcanoes, as dangerous as they are, they're very essential to the creation of many necessities on Earth, like water, land, and air. And especially with land, um, like this picture over here kind of goes with it, where it says volcanoes help Earth, like the minerals in the soil, um, they get enriched and enhanced due to the volcanoes help, which can really help crops grow for food. And so, because of all of these necessities and with the importance of volcanoes, without it, we would not be able to survive. So, in conclusion, we've covered how volcano eruptions are not only a deadly force that not only has an immediate impact, but it has a slow one, and that can lead to some devastating problems. But we also covered how when volcanoes erupt, the impact with our ocean and atmosphere play into an even greater threat, which is global warming. But it can also have some positives that can help, end or slow down global warming. Um, but overall, the importance of this topic when it relates to oceanography and meteorology is that both involve studying more about the ocean and the atmosphere. So to know that the big problems that we are facing in this world may be caused by volcanoes, and they're being basically the driving force, and the ocean and the atmosphere are more of like enhancers to the damage and destruction, or to the slowing of the damage and the destruction, um, and again slowing and progressing the ever nearing threat of global warming. And it's kind of scary to think about, but there still is a little hope. So, lastly, I'll leave you off with this question. If you want to stop or limit the progress of global warming, how could you help find ways in your community to help lower the carbon impact from entering our oceans and atmosphere? And this picture is kind of just, showing, like, this is basically a city in Indonesia, and it's been completely devastated, covered in ash, by another volcano called Mount Merapi. So this could happen to anyone. So you can just never be careful. And then here are my references.